Further, the defendant told her if the police were to have arrived at the residence, she needed to tell police she slipped on the rug at the residence. Throughout the altercation, the victim stated the defendant held her hostage and would not let her leave. So as we already know, Peggy Watson, that woman-beating piece of shit, was charged with 5 felonies in the state of Florida for beating the shit out of a girl like the coward we all know he is. And the next day, he was in court thinking he's gonna get out on bail, $115,000, right? Well, what happened was, the piece of shit, I think he paid it, thinking he's gonna get out. But then, the judge from the other case with the monster revoked his bail, so I'm hoping that asshole wasted his money and he's still sitting there. And now, all the details from the crime just came out in the police report. And when I tell you this is some sick, crazy shit, because we all know how much of a sick, crazy asshole this guy is, right? Well, now you're gonna see it firsthand when I read you all these details. Wait until you hear this shit. Are you guys ready to hear what this piece of shit did to this girl? It's long, but wait until you hear this. All right, on Saturday, March 14th, the victim went to a Miami Heat basketball game with her female friend. After the game, the defendant picked her up from her friend's house and they went to his residence. At this point, it was approximately 06 hours on Sunday, March 15th. While they were at his residence, the victim stated the defendant received a text message of a screenshot of her and her friend while at the Heat game. Remember that little clip I showed where she was showing her tits, but I had to crop it so I don't get in trouble on YouTube? That's the one he's talking about. The defendant confronted her about her whereabouts as she had not disclosed. She had gone to the game with her friend. The defendant, which is Peggy, began yelling at the victim, explaining he paid for her boob job, that she was disrespectful for having her boobs out, and that those are my boobs, also accusing her of cheating on him. See, the asshole, he thinks because he put the tits in her, that he owns them, the asshole. The victim further elaborated this when the defendant freaked out and against her will forcefully grabbed her by the neck and told her, "You stupid little bitch, that's where you were?" The victim could not remember if the defendant held her with 1 or 2 hands, but this caused bruising to her neck area right and left. So the asshole's so insecure about her going to the basketball game, he goes and he chokes her and tells her, "You little bitch, how dare you go to a basketball game and show your tits." What a f***ing asshole. The defendant began to rattle and shake her by grabbing both of her arms forcefully. He continued to push, grab her by her hair, and slam her on the floor. The defendant then dragged the victim by her hair on the floor and later pinned her up against the kitchen table. He pushed and grabbed, manhandling the victim's face, causing a scratch to the victim's right cheek. The victim stated the defendant forcefully pinned her back against the table, causing her back to bend and hurt. The defendant began yelling at the victim, "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you and your whole family." He continued to push the victim back down on the floor with force, picked her back up, and forcefully against her will sat the victim down in a chair. During the defendant's physical abuse towards the victim, she yelled, "Help me, get him off of me." Then they state there was 2 or 3 other witnesses who were present inside the residence. The victim elaborated that nobody did anything to help her or get the defendant to stop. It should be noted the victim is approximately 5'1" and weighs 125 pounds, while the defendant is 6'1" and weighs 245 pounds. That mother is not no 6'1", he's 5'8", and he's probably 170 pounds now, that little bitch. It was at this point the victim elaborated that the defendant then grabbed her with his right hand by her hair and then slammed her head down into the kitchen table. This mother took her head and put it on the table. This caused the victim to sustain a cut to her forehead, which began bleeding profusely. The victim advised she was in a state of shock when she believed she had momentarily blacked out and lost consciousness. The victim explained her memory was fuzzy afterwards, so the mother probably gave her a concussion, the bitch. The victim advised it was then the defendant stopped beating on her and snatched her cell phone out of her hands. While holding a plate, the defendant threatened to break the plate on top of her head, told her he would grab a bottle and slash it across her face, break it on her head, and then told her he would kick her face in. And that reminds me, I've spoken to people that have worked for him. I'm not going to mention any names, and they told me stories. They'd be sitting there, they're working, right, minding their own business, and he would just come and out of nowhere just kick him and be like, "Get to work, you piece of shit asshole." So this guy's a crazy. The defendant then told the victim to drink while forcefully pouring alcohol down her throat. It was at this point the defendant told his live-in assistant, which we know that Jose, that butler little bitch, clean her up. She doesn't stop bleeding, for which Jose cleaned her cut and then glued her forehead injury. It was also at this point the defendant gave his friend, who was another witness to the incident, the victim's cell phone. The defendant had his friend look through her text messages, photos, social media to make sure she is not cheating. The unidentified friend began instigating the defendant and his physical actions towards the victim. The third witness was the defendant's security guard, who told the victim to take accountability for her actions of wearing a shirt which exposed her breasts. So this asshole security guard is sitting there and telling her she shouldn't be going out to a basketball game showing her tits. What kind of world is this? When I have a girl and I'm with her, I want her to look as sexy as she can, so people look at me and be like, "That's a lucky What's wrong with these assholes?" The defendant did not allow the victim to utilize her cell phone or to call anyone. The victim was forced by the defendant to tell her cousin she got the scratch on her cheek from derma peeling. Further, the defendant told her if the police were to have arrived at the residence, she needed to tell police she slipped on the rug at the residence. Throughout the altercation, the victim stated the defendant held her hostage and would not let her leave. The victim tried to leave the residence, but the defendant feared she would contact police, and due to being on parole, he could not allow it. The defendant continued to verbally abuse and yell at her. So about not letting her leave, listen, this sick did it with his employees too. Like the people that worked with him, they told me they weren't allowed to leave the house at all. And he would do the same shit to them. The victim eventually fell asleep, and upon waking the next day, she wanted to leave the defendant's residence, but he would not let her leave. The defendant continued to tell the victim she could not leave because her face was messed up, and you have to stay here for more days until your face heals up. So he was trying to keep her there to heal up her face so that way nobody would see it. The defendant told her if she went home, her parents would call the police on him, and I can't go to jail. The defendant further stated, "If I go to jail, something bad is going to happen to you, all your friends, and your family." The defendant further implied he would have girls jump the victim in order to ruin her reputation. The defendant further told the security guard, "Make sure she doesn't run," and had him stand by the door in an effort to keep the victim from leaving the residence. So that asshole security guard and Jose both took part in this shit. They should be getting charged too, those pieces of shit. Most of the following day, she elaborated the defendant had monitored her incoming text messages. He would give her the phone briefly and told her she needed to tell people she was okay and text them back. Other times, the defendant would act as if he was her and send text messages on her behalf, pretending to be her. "I'm okay. I'm going to sleep." So this little bitch takes her phone, pretends to be her, and texts all the people texting her. I had a crazy ex-girlfriend that did that shit to me. This guy's out of his mind. She advised she stealthily took possession of her cell phone as it was on the table while the defendant was getting dressed. The defendant threatened her by telling her, "If you want to keep your family safe, don't call the police." While the victim was seated in a chair, he lifted the chair with such force, he dropped the victim on the floor. So he picked up the chair while she's sitting in it and smashes her down. What the he thinks he's in the WWE, this asshole? The incident of physical abuse lasted approximately 40 minutes, but led into the following day. 2 days of this hell? During this time, the victim was scared and afraid of the defendant. She believed he was capable of killing her, and then himself, as he said such to her. The victim stated the defendant does have firearms in the residence, but was unsure how many. And then they show here, wow, so it's listing all the different injuries she had. And like I said, I seen the ones on her face, but I didn't see all this shit. This mother, he's a monster. Look at this shit. Bruises on right shoulder, bruise on left shoulder, large dark bruise underneath the right breast. Yeah, he was trying to cut it out, the asshole, with his hands. Further, it's clear the defendant struck the victim against her will, causing several injuries and causing the victim to lose consciousness, forcefully striking the victim's face against the table, imprisoned the victim by both threat and violence, and confined her at his residence without letting the victim leave, threatened to hurt the victim while holding a plate, and after already committing battery against her, depriving the victim of the cell phone after snatching it from her hands and preventing the victim from communicating with law enforcement. The defendant has been charged accordingly. So yeah, this guy, honestly, he's worse than what I thought he was. Because we always said, you know, we see him go crazy on camera and shit, like what happens behind closed doors. But after reading this shit, I mean, I don't see him ever coming out of prison. There's no way. And I spoke to people who were at the house. There's security cameras outside. I think some of this took place out there, so who knows what the cops saw. I think there's only one in the house, but I don't know what that picked up. But yeah, this guy is a fucking monster, and I think this is the last we're gonna see of Wes Watson. And babe, you know this new studio move? Do you know what kind of a pain in the ass this is? I haven't been able to film a video for days. But you know what else I've been doing for days? Remember this top T shit? Well, it's some crazy shit. Wait until I show you later what it's doing to me. I'm gonna turn you into my sharmuta. Guys, thanks for watching. Please hit like on my video.